I only have like 50 slides, so we can go through this pretty well, right? Okay, great. So today my presentation is about sustaining and managing longitudinal passive behavioral panels and some of the insights that we've discovered over the years on how to actually maintain these. I'd like to thank my co-authors, Liz Alvarez and Jim Bernier, for this presentation as well. So again, today we're going to talk a little bit about why would we even consider collecting online behavioral data as another option for another data collection mode. We're going to also address some data privacy concerns, and that's a big topic, obviously, for a lot of panelists. And we want to know what they think about it and what they also, consider when it comes to that. We also are going to look at some engagement strategies that help to improve retention over time and give you some thoughts on what we found. Finally, this notion of building trust, we're going to show you how we actually establish that with our panelists more. And we have some incredible understanding of some insights in terms of compensation for being on a passive behavioral panel. So why would we want to consider online behavioral data? Well, this is data that is collected real time, always on, 24/7, 365 days. And it is definitely something that is in the moment of the actual consumer or actual panelists that we have. The methods have evolved over time, and we're talking about things that used to be dongles and cookie tracking to now mobile apps, TV meters. You've got wearables and Fitbits. So there's a lot of ways to collect online behavioral data. We also noticed that this is not necessarily a replacement of primary methods. This is an enhancement to a lot of the things that we're already currently doing. It adds extra insights and it adds extra depth of data. And one of the things we consider when it comes to this is that we have declining response rates for many of our audiences. And we also know that the newer generations coming on board are very tech enabled. So we're trying to find other ways to engage them and complement and supplement our surveys. So I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about data privacy. And I think that we all are constantly inundated with data privacy all over the place, whether it was, starting with things like Cambridge Analytica or GDPR or the TikTok ban, not ban. Again, the consumers are clearly flooded all the time with data privacy concerns. So the question comes, are they numb to it? If you think about what you did today, were you faced with another privacy policy that you had to accept in order to get to the next stage of what you wanted to access? So we decided to look at what our panelists actually think when it comes to wanting to join a passive online behavioral data panel. And so the reasons that they declined were not surprising. Privacy was the #1 concern of why people decided not to join the passive behavioral panel. So, okay, that's not surprising. But then we wanted to know, well, what do people actually do when given consents for privacy policies? So when asked to actually consent to privacy policies, we found that majority of people, they're confronted with these privacy policies practically all the time. Every day, more than once a week, that's hugely a lot of privacy policies that they're asked to consent to. But then do they actually read the privacy policies that they're actually consented to? No, they don't. So we've got this contrast of people that are actually given the privacy policies, but then are they actually asked to read them? So people go through motions to get to what they want to access to. Whether you want to access a website or you want to access the app, you're actually just going through the motions. So one thing, though, to note here is of the people that actually did read the privacy policies, only 7% actually even understood the privacy policies that they actually read. So it's our job in this space of actually having a privacy policy to be clear and transparent, because there are people that actually do read them. Well, we know people like to be engaged. So the people that did join our passive panels, we moved from a monthly to a weekly incentive, and we saw huge improvements in terms of retention. Not only that, we offered extra bonuses for their time that they had given us utilizing the passive meter, and that increased even more. So we found that, okay, communicating with them, offering them more random bonuses, offering them more communication and incentives on a more regular basis, definitely added to the retention over time. Now, once people were engaged and they like to be engaged, they actually started responding more to being engaged. So that meant that within the first 48 hours of actually giving a stated response, stated survey, 59% over 39% response rate. So that was like a 51% increase in response rates for surveys among the passively metered base. So they liked to be engaged. They actually liked that. So that was good. We felt like we had been really making somewhere with the meter base. And then once we figured that out, the responsive people then started to trust you. And what did that mean? That led to whether it was attentiveness and engagement that built this trust over time. We found that it led to this huge increase in retention. So the amount of data we were actually getting from the metered panel, so whether it was 1 day versus 7 days of metered activity versus 14 days of that online activity, you can see over time the increase in retention, the more data we were actually getting, because these people were actually feeling like, well, you're paying me, you're communicating with me, I'll continue to give you the data that you're asking for. Well, of course, this now begs the question of how much do we have to pay these people in order for them to stay giving us all this data? So we polled Knowledge Panel and we said, okay, you know what is the desired incentive amount for giving online behavioral data every single day for a month? And when we looked at both the non-metered base and the metered base, the acceptable range was somewhere between $30 and $150. Well, that's an awful lot of money, and it's a huge range of people. But the sweet spot of trying to understand exactly what they really wanted and looked for was vastly different from people that said, yes, I'll do this versus people that said, no, I won't. So again, still between $50 and $90 or even between $75 and $100 is still kind of expensive. So we said, well, all right, what if we just give $30? What does that actually do? Well, you can see here that even the metered base was saying, well, 34% of them said that's still too cheap. You're going to have to pay me more money for that. But 20% of the people accepted it. So we started really thinking about, well, what is the ideal incentive? Well, if we actually surveyed people every single day in a month and we paid them $1 or $2, that's actually not that different from actually giving them or actually getting passive data from them. And we're not actually asking them to do anything except to keep the meter running either on their device or keep it running on a wearable. So that didn't actually seem like it was a huge deal when it came to actually looking at it from a different angle. So what did we actually learn from a lot of the things we worked on here? Well, we looked at data privacy is important. While people may not be reading or looking at fully the consents that you're actually delivering to them, we have to keep in mind that we have to be clear and transparent for the ones that actually are reading it. And then once they join, then we want to keep them engaged, pay them more often, communicate with them more often, give them something fun to do, which is, things like random bonuses here and there. That definitely increases the response rate. And then over time, because trust forms, they stay on your panel longer and they continue to participate and they continue to supply you with more and more of this data. The incentives are not cheap, but they're also not quite out of the ballpark. They're definitely not unjustified when you start to think about, well, how many surveys would I have to deliver in order to get all of the vast amount of data I can collect from real-time behavioral data? So there we go. So it wasn't quite 50 slides.